We are live. Silver Doctors live on air. It is Friday, the very first Friday live stream. I'm excited to be back once again. It's the sixth day of the month of December. And of course, as always, there's a lot of things to talk about. We're going to touch on a lot of it. So my name is Mike, co-host. Over here is my better half, Mr. Half Dollar. How you doing, Mr. Half Dollar?
Doing good today, Mike. Coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Area 52. So, excuse me if I look a little bit blurry on the screen.
It's all good. It's all good. Hopefully it clears up. But that being the case, we'll give it a second. Let's pop up in the chat, see if we have any guests joining us thus far. It looks like we have a couple people. And so, as always, for those that are watching, let us know where you're watching from. We'll definitely love to acknowledge your presence in the chat. And then if we have any new viewers to the community, welcome to Silver Doctors. So we got Big Bubs. Says, what is up, fellas, stackers, and patriots? Dayton, Ohio here. We got Glenn. Hi, Mike and Paul and everyone. Low blood pressure. Hello, everyone. A little early today. Yes. Trying to do something a little bit different. I figure it'd be easier to cover more topics if we were to arrange our time schedule to where we could actually get more stuff done earlier and then squeeze in an extra video during the week. So we're going to try it out and see how it works and make sure it gives you guys an opportunity to connect with us. So that being the case, time is limited. So let's get into today's topic. We got Les from Oregon, Southwest. We got David, Lorenz. Okay, so we got more people tuning in. Appreciate it. So with that being the case, Mr. Half Dollar, subject matter. What do you want to talk about? Free for all. What do you have in mind?
Well, the trade war, what we talked about earlier this week, the trade war and the supposed trade deal has, in fact, been one of the main topics for this week. I don't know if you've been following that, but for the first couple of days this week, President Trump was saying, we can wait until after the election for all I'm concerned. China really wants to make a deal, but we can wait. We're going to hold off to get the best possible deal. Then on Wednesday, Bloomberg started coming out talking about how we're close to a deal. And that same kind of, narrative has been following through to today. But yesterday I spoke with Brian Oxner, and Brian's actually a farmer out in Kansas. And obviously this is anecdotal, right? It's one man's opinion with what he sees. He spends half of the year on the family farm in Kansas and half of the year in Denver, Colorado, right? And he's also been in finance and things like this. But my point is that what he's seeing with boots on the ground, it's not a booming economy. When President Trump said back in October, on October 12th, better start thinking about buying new tractors, he's like, no way. You need to think about cutting expenses because they're not having an optimistic view of the future here. There's several interesting dynamics with that, Mike. Like, for example, remember on Monday, President Trump came out and said that he was putting back the steel and aluminum tariffs on Brazil, right? Because they are devaluing their currencies and it's hurting our farmers. He specifically said that in that tweet. And then USDA Secretary Perdue, Sonny Perdue, he came out the very next day on the 4th, which would have been Tuesday, and he said, yeah, that's one of the reasons why we put those steel and aluminum tariffs back on. So there's several things to glean here, right? First of all, Brian was telling me, well, even if, so the dollar weakens, right? So that's going to help our exporters, but that's not going to help our farmers because that's just going to raise their input costs. You see what I'm saying? So he says on net, that's a wash. That's not going to do anything at all. He says that American farmers can simply no longer compete on the global economy. They can no longer compete. That's one thing. Another thing, he said China by 2035, they want to be the number one grain producer for all grains in the world, right? So, basically the point was the rest of the world doesn't even need U.S. agriculture as much as U.S. agriculture needs China, right? Because China buys more soybeans than all the other nations on the planet combined. Right. And then the thing about tying it in with Brazil and Argentina. Right. So it's like this trade war. You could say, yes, it's a trade war between the United States and China. But there are these collateral damages, casualties going all around, because, if you're talking about bringing up, tariffs on Brazil and Argentina for something they're doing in relation with China. Well, this thing is just like a world trade war. It's not like a trade war; it's like a world trade war. Thoughts on that? I just kind of rambled on a lot of points there, Mike.
No, that's interesting because I haven't spoken to any farmers directly, so I don't know much about that line or that sector. But yet, it's interesting how you mentioned that the world doesn't need U.S. agriculture, but the U.S. needs China's side of the deal. And so that's interesting because, once again, this whole trade war situation is touted at being something that's favorable for America, meant to bring back jobs and all that good stuff. But once again, if the farming sector is in danger, and of course there's already been bailouts or relief or whatever it might be labeled as, how do you resolve this issue? Is what it's boiled down to. How do you resolve this issue to where farmers can be profitable as well as all the connecting parties with manufacturing of equipment and all those things? How can this be turned around if at all possible?
No, it can't really be turned around. And there's also a few more interesting points to bring up about that because, you know, President Trump's been saying China's buying soybeans. They're buying up our soybeans. Well, just this week, Purdue said they're not really buying the soybeans, right? They said they were going to buy 20 million metric tons, and they only bought like between 5 and 10. So they're totally not doing what they said that they were going to be doing at all. So they're not buying it. But here's the thing, right? A lot of people don't know this, but the U.S. used to have a strategic, well, no, not used to. The U.S. has a strategic petroleum reserve, right? Like I'm sure you've heard of that. Yeah. We have a strategic petroleum reserve. So every once in a while, like when gas prices get above $5, we're like, oh, release some of this petroleum, so help alleviate gas prices. The United States used to have a strategic wheat reserve, right? And this guy that I was talking to yesterday, Brian Oxford, he's a wheat farmer in Kansas. That's what he grows. It's called dairyland wheat, but dryland wheat or some kind of wheat like that. But we used to have up to 4 million metric tons of wheat in a strategic stockpile. And then it was expanded, right? And it was expanded to include other commodities as well, right? Other grains and rice and things like this. And then the United States sold every single last bit in 2008 and has not gone back to this strategic stockpile ever since. So this just brings up a few different points and a few different questions that I just want to throw out, right? If we're really talking about helping these farmers out, why isn't the government buying up all this soybeans that aren't getting sold and putting it in the strategic stockpile? Why aren't they handing out these tractors to the farmers instead of making them go into debt and buy it? Why are they not coming up with these wheat stockpiles anymore, right? Creating that demand, because they've been through 3 tranches of a bailout. President Trump keeps talking about $28 billion has been handed out, but is that really going on? So there's some stuff behind the scenes here where it's not an optimistic outlook. And when you're talking with the farmers, it's not an optimistic outlook at all.
Interesting. So I was not aware of the whole national stockpile for food. So basically, we're not prepared if something does hit. And so basically, like I think earlier this week, I commented on some videos about the homelessness crisis and how politicians don't seem to be addressing that either. So that's obviously not of importance in the grand scheme of things, apart from this impeachment stuff. But I'm thinking like, if there was a crisis to where we weren't able to get our typical supplies from wherever it comes from around the world, we don't have any reserves. Just like we have no savings. We're heavily indebted, and then there's no food stockpile, or, to my knowledge, any alternative mediums for energy. And then the question would be: is what's really in the petroleum stockpile? I mean, is there something still there, or what? So it makes me question a lot of things.
Yeah. And, that's like part of prepping 101, right? Like before you have your gold and your silver, you need to be able to make sure that you have something that you can drink and something that you can eat, right? Like these are your absolute most basics. And to think that as a nation, we're trying to help out the farmers, but we just completely neglect the fact that we used to have this 4 million metric ton strategic wheat reserve. And, it's just whatever, hopefully China will buy more soybeans. Well, if they really wanted to help, they could actually do something,
Yeah. So as you mentioned that about having 4 million metric tons, I can't really fathom what that looks like in front of me if it was to be the case. But I'm thinking like, man, if they let go of all that, all of our savings in the form of food, I wonder what's in Fort Knox.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder how easy was it to let that go, if it's still there or if it's just Tunskin bars or. Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah. Yes. Now the total, right? So in 2008, it wasn't 4 million metric tons. In 2008, it was 915,000. That was all that was left.
So it was a drawdown.
Right? But yeah, it was a drawdown. And then in 2008, throughout the course of that whole year, is when they sold off the last 915,000 metric tons of wheat and other commodities. And it's interesting too because it talks about talking about these aid packages to the farmers, right? And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. And so as you mentioned that, thoughts come to mind. And so it was a continuous drawdown over the years. So clearly that was a strategic sell-off. And the question is, at what price was it sold to? And then as well as to whom? And I'd imagine it happened to be China. Would you say so? Like I would imagine they sold it to them at a discount rate, probably to smooth them over for whatever was probably going on behind the deals. Because since they're our biggest creditor, or they were our biggest creditor, we are their biggest debtor. I think we kind of need to watch their back, scratch their back a little bit more outside of the obvious. So these type of special deals, I can see those those becoming very favorable for China. So it's a no-brainer for them to continue to play this narrative of, we'll buy your treasuries and we'll support you still and we'll buy goods, you buy our goods, whatever. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and it doesn't say exactly who that it went to, just that they sold it right on the USDA's website. And here's another thing about that with just as far as this bailout, right? Because I asked him, and actually he didn't answer it now that I think about it. But the actual word, and I got to remember I want to see what the actual word is called. I don't remember the actual word. It's called there's a term the USDA uses talking about this bailout. I called it a bailout, emergency relief, or a subsidy. I don't know exactly how you want to call it, but it's called market facilitating participation, or it's got some bland name, but it's basically the U.S. helping the farmers. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that it's doing is direct cash handouts. Remember, they said they were going to be giving out cash before Thanksgiving, so apparently this is already happening. But one thing is direct cash handouts. Then the other thing is they're going to be purchasing food. And then it lists things that they're going to be purchasing, and they specifically name things, right? They specifically say potatoes and whatever, but they do not mention soybeans at all, right? So there's this whole huge trade war sticking point, and we have all this stuff about soybeans, but yet, the easiest thing to do, just buy these soybeans, right? That's all we do anyway is print money, so why not just print them up and buy some soybeans to help out the farmers, Mike?
Yeah, and so not only will you help out the farmers, but you'll also be able to accumulate something that the nation might end up needing in a worst case scenario, if that was important. But I'm getting the feeling that that's not really of importance, especially when I mentioned earlier about the homelessness situation. Skid Row in California. I've been watching a lot of videos on that, and to see millions of people wrapped around corners on it just they did a drone view of that, and I'm thinking wow, that is a crisis like no other. That's to me a humanitarian aid crisis. We always run to the rescue in all these other underdeveloped nations. What happened to running to LA or anywhere else is bad.
I lived in Texas for 9 years, and about every year and a half, we would go to Los Angeles, or we would go to San Diego, or we would go, because we would oftentimes go to the beach, or we'd go to Disneyland. So I've been there several times, and over the course of a decade, and you can just see the steady deterioration. You're driving on the freeways in Los Angeles at 3 a.m. to go beat the traffic, to go drive back east, right? To get back to Texas. And it's you're just driving, all of a sudden you hit something in the middle of the freeway because, they can't clear the roads off and they don't have any money to pay for the street lights to work. So, my fender, the quarter panel, the front passenger side quarter panel gets ripped off. I don't know what I hit. It could have been, I don't even want to think of what I hit, but if the roads are all worn down out there, the homelessness, the trash is everywhere. You stay in a hotel, right? We like to stay in Quinta because it's one of the only places where they don't give you a hassle with a dog. Mm-hmm. But you go to take out your dog and you're do I really want to be around here with all this, just dirty, bums asking you for stuff you don't know what they're high on. It really was a third world country, and it really is turning into that. And then the other thing that strikes me is the steady progression from my times going to California, because it was a day trip, right? Mm-hmm. So to get to LA was one full day of driving. And, it's a lot of Eastern as far as Asian and Indian that are visiting LA. It's not even Americans that go there anymore as far as tourists goes. It's foreigners that are going there as tourists. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else, experiences these similar things. So it'd be nice to hear what other people had to say in chat about how their recent experiences of LA have been.
Yeah, I haven't been to LA in some time. And actually, I'm due to go out there. So I probably will plan a trip and just go out there and shoot some video footage and get some actual first take look at it. So before we move any further, let's check in with the chat. As always, anybody new to the channel or new to the live stream, welcome. Let us know where you're watching from. We acknowledge your presence. And then also highlight @Silver Doctors if you have a thought, question, or any other news story worthy of mentioning. We'll definitely touch on it. So Monty Silver says, learn to grow indoor hydroponics. It's going to get cold. Yeah, so hydroponics, I talked to somebody that mentioned that, and I Googled, looked it up, but never really dived into it. There's so much stuff that are alternatives to diversifying yourself out of the mainstream way of doing things. It's just, it takes time to investigate and learn that stuff. What we got here, it says, think the Democrats are purposely trying to lose 2020 so they won't be in power during the collapse, so they can blame Republicans instead of Obama's 7-year 0% interest rates. That's interesting. I wouldn't at this point. I wouldn't put any type of thought or suggestion past anything. So anything is more than possible. And so someone says buying seeds now before shortages appear. I went Christmas shopping last night and I noticed more empty storefronts than I'm used to seeing. Yeah, I haven't done that, but I don't. I'm hearing more about it. And also, speaking of which, I saw an article or something about all-time record high 9.2 billion, I think, for online sales, set a record or something like that. So I'm assuming that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be spun off as like a bonus. But nevertheless, the fact that all those retail stores didn't have any traffic and therefore going to have to lay off a lot of people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting how the
Mm-hmm.
Manchester United can spin off something good in the midst of something bad.
Yep. Yep. That's right.
Oh man. All right. Well, nothing here. So I think it's time to buy silver, gentlemen. Yeah, it's always been time, Robin. Yeah, it's always been time.
Here's something I want to show you, Mike. This is something that one of the readers brought to our attention, and I actually remember seeing this, but it was just such a fleeting moment yesterday that I didn't do any coverage on it. But I just want to hit on this because I don't really know what to think about it.
Okay, let me pull this
Um,
up.
so I'm just going to read the title as you're working with
Okay,
that there, but
go
it
ahead.
says illegal gold flowing through Miami is a direct threat to U.S. national security, Marco Rubio says, right? So Marco Rubio is not a good guy, right? This guy is deep state, this guy's through and through deep stater, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that tweeted out, dead Gaddafi as trolling Maduro, saying this is going to happen to you, right?
Yeah.
So this is like Mr. Regime change for Venezuela, looking after Venezuela first instead of Florida first. But I don't really know what to think about this. One of the quotes in there says, we need to make it harder to bring gold in here. And like when I hear Michael Rubio say that, I immediately think, well, what that means is he wants to make it easier for the corrupt government insiders that are bringing in the illegal gold to bring in the illegal gold. They want to eliminate all the mom and pop smuggling operations. That's what I hear when I see that kind of a quote. So I don't know. Did you hear about that, or do you have any thoughts that you wanted to
I
add
didn't
on to
I
that?
didn't hear about Marco Rubio's comments on that. I saw something. I've seen this couple articles about gold smuggling and so there's one story I heard. I wish I could pull it up, but it was a gentleman who it was like in somewhere in the Asian area smuggled a kilo out in like liquid form, and he shaved his head and put it in a paste form and put a toupee
Mm-hmm.
on, and was going through the airport. And apparently, according to how it was manufactured, it was doable, but yet somebody ended up calling in on them and snitched on them. So people are being more creative. And then I saw another article, and these two articles in Asia. One guy decided to put up his backside, thinking he wasn't gonna get caught, but of course he got caught. So I'm thinking like, wow, people
Yeah.
down there are smuggling. It's illegal. The mining sector down there, from what I've heard of Venezuela, is like they got people paying and just risking their life for the smallest amount of weight, and then they smuggle it back, and people are making a profit off of that. So taking
Mm-hmm.
advantage of poverty and complete monetary chaos. But then out in Asia, the two stories has to do more so with just the people trying to get out of the country with some money because it's for capital flight reasons. So gold is obviously a method that people are using heavily to do such, and so some are risking their lives for it and jail time and
Yeah.
everything else. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a huge operation, right? It's not just like someone gets a couple gold bars and then they smuggle. No, we're talking about like mining operations and all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that could if there is an illegal mine, which could be easily shut down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the issue there. You could theoretically easily shut down an illegal gold mining operation because you know where it is, right? You know where they're mining. It's not like you got to go on a high speed chase through rush hour to find these people. No, they're mining the gold right there.
Yeah. I pulled up.
So this is
So I'm sorry.
so
Wait.
this is
Go ahead.
so this is something to watch, right?
Yeah.
Because this just came out yesterday, and apparently they're trying to work. I don't know if they're trying to make some sort of new bill off of this or what they're trying to do with this. But either way, not just for gold, but just in general, whatever that they're trying to do here is not good news for liberty and for freedom, right?
Yeah.
So this is whatever it is that they're going to be doing is going to be restrictive to the average American.
Right, and it starts outside. They test it outside and bring it home inside. And so as you're talking, I pulled up on the screen. So right now, there's a gentleman with a 5,000 Bolivar note holding a couple gold nuggets or gold crumbs. And I'd imagine that's probably a full day's work in his hand, which probably could be, several hundred, if not, maybe $1,000 of value right there. But he's probably going to get rid of that for like maybe $50. So think about the person he's selling it to, the amount of profit they're making off of his hard labor, and he only gets crumbs in a sense. So that's unfortunate that the people have been exploited like that. So, but
yeah, and it's like the alphabet soup agencies that are behind this, right? From Vietnam era, bringing back the drugs and the body bags, and we don't need to talk about Afghanistan and the poppies And then you talk about the other things too, and like Pablo Escobar's son wrote the book, said that his dad was working for the CIA, right? So I
Mhm.
mean, that like this is like, like, or you look at like Fast and Furious with the drug running not the drug running, with
The
the arms
guns,
running
yeah.
to feed the drug cartels down in Mexico. It's like this stuff comes from the corrupt alphabet soup agencies
Yeah.
top.
Now watch this.
Um,
Speaking of which, you mentioned cartels and so on. We got the whole idea that Trump is referencing or trying to refer or label the Mexican cartels as terrorists. And I read an article mentioned about the president, saying that there's never been foreign soldiers on Mexican soil since 1904 or whatever. When the last time there's probably an invasion or war or something. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it so? Of course, whenever you hear the mainstream story about Mexican cartels being terrorists, that lets me know that something drug related that's not benefiting America, more than likely, my personal opinion. So, what are your thoughts about that? Is that the real deal, and will they turn it to another ISIS type event?
that's a hard one because the war on drugs is a losing war, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would subscribe to like the Ron Paul type of opinions with this. But then again, you end the drug war, and what are all the drug cartels going to do, right? Because they're not just going to like quietly say, okay, well, I guess I'll go, sell tortillas on the street. It's like they're not going to be too happy with that, right? So, I mean, this is a mess any way you slice it, right? So you're going to see an increase in kidnappings, and you're going to see an increase of other illicit activity. So they're just basically going to transition from one thing to the next, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, so my point is there's going to be a nasty transition period. And if people think that it's nasty now, which it is, it will get even nastier after the fact, right? And I kind of think about it like with the prohibition, right? And you had all this liquor running, and then after prohibition there was kind of a little bit of chaos, but then things kind of normaled down after that. So in the long run, things could normal out because we're focusing on the wrong thing. Remember, you can't win a war against an idea, right? We can't win a war on homelessness. We can't win a war on terrorism. We can't win a war on drugs. We can't win any of these wars on things. You can only win a war against a defined enemy that's a person, right? So, so it's just bad all the way around, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, but it could get better, right? But getting better requires the government giving the people more freedom and liberty, and the government never really wants to do that.
Yeah. I was trying to find an article where it looks like as a result of all the activity happening below the border, there are certain towns where the cartel or the drug ring or whatever it's labeled as is causing havoc. And so there's three major cities where there's a lot of foreigners, i.e., expats, and they are scared out their minds. Some are leaving, and all types of things are happening. And so here's an article here. I'll pull this up, but it's interesting how because of this whole labelism as terrorism type stuff, they're trying to extort and bribe and all types of things Americans as well as small business owners down there to where, once again, that's not good for those that are looking to travel down. They nevertheless try to call themselves moving out of the country.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
I
yeah.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and because that's my whole point, right? Is like the point is, well, where do you go? There's really nowhere you can go, right? It's basically coming down to everybody, right? Everybody's got to come into this like prepper survivalist mindset. The financial crisis is coming. The financial crisis crash is coming. At this point, it's just hunkering down, building up your defenses and trying to weather through this storm, right? Because there's nowhere to go, right? Because the bottom line is every single country on earth uses an unbacked debt-based fiat currency that is mathematically guaranteed to fail, right? That's the problem. The problem is that our money is corrupt and evil and not good or honest anymore. That's the problem. And the solution is fixed, but nobody wants to go through the solution because then it requires the government relinquishing power back to the people.
Yeah, man, you sound very optimistic there. I'm just messing with you.
Is that optimism? I don't know if that's optimism
I'm
or
just
not.
messing with you. All right, so let's check in the chat and see what's going on here. And so we got Silver Doctors. They won the war against gold and silver. They won the war against gold and silver. LOL. So interesting. Gold and silver, gold and stocks will both go up. Yeah, in the short term, definitely everything will go up because I think it's going to be a result of monetary policy. That's the whole drive and goal to keep this expansion going. So everything will have to go. Everything will eventually go up. Yes, but yet when it comes down, because everything can't go up forever, and that's gonna be the problem. It can't go up forever. There must be a day of correction. Correction is only healthy. Like, I mean, you have to let things clear out, get a reboot, fresh start, but in moderation though, not when you excessively drive it up and expect it to keep going. Because when it comes down, it's going to come down and have to start something new. So That's just my 2 cents right there. What else we got going on here?
There was a shootout in Florida this morning. Did you hear about this shootout in Florida?
Nope, I did not. I didn't get there yet. I don't want to hear about it. Go
It,
ahead.
it,
Go ahead.
I don't want to turn this into doom and gloom Friday. I don't know why I went there, but this just struck my attention as a few different things that are going on. And the very first reason that it struck my attention is because there's all these people who think that we're just going to have autonomous trucks carrying around Amazon goods all over the country. And I'm saying that is not going to happen, and that's never going to happen. And I thought what had happened was that a UPS was commandeered. Basically, they used it as a getaway from robbing a jewelry store, right? But in Florida, so a couple of people robbed this jewelry store, and then they hijacked a UPS truck and went on like this high-speed chase, and then they were involved in the shootout. There are a few different crazy things that I wanted to touch about, right? Because I keep talking about, this kind of chaos we see around the world. It's slowly starting to work its way up to the surface, and we're seeing it in the United States. A couple of things here. Like if you look at these videos, because there's a lot of videos all around, and you got cops using like firing from like hunkered down behind the vehicles, like using the cars, wheel well as like cover, right? And then where they're firing from is like right beside where the person in the driver's seat is just scared out of their mind. So you got people shooting at the cops, then you got people sitting in the car, and the cops are using the car as cover. It's like, my goodness. So it's like, this is just crazy stuff all around. Another thing is like when you get to the autonomous driving trucks and stuff like that, I mean, if stuff like this goes on, if people are willing to go through this kind of stuff with actually live people, there's going to be no qualms with, ramming a autonomous truck off of the road and then ransacking that, right? So this all hopeful future that we think that we have coming, and all this great, wonderful technology that's going to do all these wonderful things to improve our lives. Just look at that shootout in Florida, and it's not coming, right? It's not going to come. If anything, I tweeted out, like a burn down truck in Venezuela, and I said, pretty soon this is actually what it's going to look like, right? A high-speed chase through Florida during rush hour, and 4 people getting killed in a shootout, although big, is small potatoes compared with what's coming.
Yeah, I would agree. That's that's a heck of a story there. I didn't touch on that yet today. So but the thing is, it's still early. So hopefully, I don't know. Was there a lot of casualties, or what was that like, or what was the result?
The UPS driver was killed, right? He was the one that was hijacked, and then the 2 robbers were killed. No cops was killed, and then it said a bystander were killed, and it's probably one of those people that was in one of those cars, right? But I mean, if you're listening to the shootout, I mean, there are hundreds of rounds going off all around, broad daylight, cars all around, and then the cops are just like using all of the different civilian cars as cover. And obviously, if someone's shooting at you, the first thing you do is take cover, right, and return fire, right? But just the point is that this is just like a bad situation all the way around. And if people are willing to go through this in broad daylight with living human beings, imagine trying to get to a more autonomous world. What's actually going to happen?
Yeah, you're right about that. So someone says 4 deaths and 1 injured. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Man, and so let's move on. Let's change that subject there. That's unfortunate, man. Prayers go out to
jobs.
Individuals.
Yep. Black Swan said jobs. Jobs was released today. 266,000 jobs, Mike. I mean, it smashed all. No, that's a huge number. That's a huge
300
number.
and some million people. That's a huge number. I'm just playing. Go ahead.
Right. It smashed expectations. I think expectations were 180, but basically, they're saying that 41,300 jobs were added because of the striking workers, right? But last month they said that 41,600 jobs were lost. So on net, right, we've actually lost automotive jobs this month, even though the worker strike ended at GM. That's one of the...
Okay, go ahead. I was going to touch on that Detroit situation, but go ahead. I'll touch on that later.
Touch on that.
All right, so yesterday, I did a little video about just Detroit. Right? So someone informed me that Detroit was laying off 800 people, and they're laying off 800 at a plant not too far. It's like miles away, where it's been there forever, but yet they're basically going to shake it up and reshake it up and retool it for electrical vehicles, because now they have to get into the race, because Audi's making changes, all the German manufacturers are making changes. So everybody's retooling their shops for automation. And with that retooling, it doesn't require human beings. So they're going to bring in robots. So like I mentioned this before, earlier in the month, or early in the winter or fall, whatever it is. We're not winter yet, fall. Early in the fall, how this GM strike does not it does not turn out good for anybody, because you're striking at the same time your labor is no longer needed. So you're trying to ask for more as opposed to being grateful for what you have. But I understand their concerns, but because they don't know what's occurring primarily. But I pretty much said by the beginning of 2020, expect probably all those, was it 20,000, 30,000, how many ever was it was striking, to one by one be laid off in some form or fashion. Because once again, at the end of the day, robots don't strike.
Mhm.
Software don't take days off. So it's unfortunate, but yet I saw it coming, and I'm like, 800 is just a start. So it's good to say it's probably gonna be a lot more than that. We're just hearing 800, or I'm just hearing 800 from a local Detroit news station. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, no, those are good points because when you come up with that automation, basically what you're talking about is a very small crew of support, right? And what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about at that point are techs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Techs, right? So you're talking about networking, you're talking about electric repair, the computer repair. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about the new worker for that kind of a scenario,
Mm-hmm.
right? Basically, someone to maintain the robots, to maintain the computer programs, to configure the software, and all of those types of jobs.
Yeah.
And then that kind of a job is going to retire some sort of intelligence, and it's not to say that a person turning bolts isn't intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's to say that, they're going to have to up that level of education a lot and have to be competitive with that because remember, IT stuff can be done remotely. Granted, changing a hard drive or swapping out a cable, that can't. But anything else, yes, it can. So, that's what we talk about, getting different income streams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something that the farmer said yesterday. He was like, look at farming as an income stream too. And he's like, anybody who's thinking about it, just do it. And he actually mentioned hydroponic, which was interesting. And just another little interesting tidbit. I didn't know this, but in the 2018 Farm Bill legalized industrial hemp growing across all 50 states. So that's kind of interesting there too. But he just said that the government has created such a mess with agriculture that it's just, the state of agriculture in the United States is just an absolute mess. And I do highly recommend people watch that video because, Brian's got a lot of street smarts and he's got a lot of financial smarts and he's an actual farmer growing wheat in Kansas, and he understands these kind of dynamics that are at play. Because oftentimes in the alternative media, right, we pick up the stories that people are sending us, but they're just writing about there's flooding in the Midwest or something. Well, this person is actually there where the flood is and they're talking about it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Interesting, man. That's an interesting story there. So hydroponics. Now that's something to put on my to-do list. And so as we get ready to draw this thing down, I want to pull up an article that I thought was it's kind of interesting. And so there's a lot of activity going on in France right now. And so it looks like, from what I've gathered thus far, that people they've been on the street for several months now, but they're starting to ramp up because of the issuance. They're looking to issue a new digital currency to roll out in 2020, just basically rebranding their former currency into solely digits. That's all it is. And then they're also making pension reforms, which reforms basically means haircut. So they're looking to cut and change up some things, and people aren't too happy with that. So here's an article here. And so this gives the people already on the streets wearing yellow vests more of an incentive for people to join in with them, because you're going to have a lot of people of the older demographic extremely unhappy outside of whatever they're already experiencing, and they're in the streets right now. So keep an eye on that, because that's something that, once again, just won't be an isolated event. It will definitely spread a little bit, I believe. So,
Yeah. And not only that, but it's like real challenges and real consequences just for the nation as a whole. Because I was reading a couple days ago, just tying into what you're saying, like the whole entirety of like Western France is like either out of, or they had run out of gas, or I mean, like these strikes actually have like actual impacts on the economy, right?
mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have not seen in the United States for a long time. All this taken to the streets, it's just this paid kind of like bussing in protesters, and they're not really motivated. But when the people really take to the streets, and you're talking about like 1968 type stuff, man, that's going to be ugly. I just saw something today about the ATF said there's like 423 million firearms in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
So
which
yeah.
goes to show you why.
So the question is, I saw something like that as well. So what was that about? What made that survey, or why did they decide to go into that? And so I'd imagine it has something to do with the shooting events, and they're probably in 2020 there being some type of an official type of bill proposed, if not one already, about trying to remove or curtail, or some type of program is going to be rolled out in the next 2 years as this thing begins to become hard to hide as far as the challenges people are going to face, and people are going to be very mad. And I can see people going to the streets in this nature, but yet with something on their hip. So,
Mhm.
and then all it takes is one knucklehead, and everything out there
Yep.
changes.
Yep. One powder keg is all it takes. And one last point about the jobs, because I just wanted to say this,
Yes, sir.
because I forgot to mention this. Um, if you believe the numbers, which I don't believe the numbers, but if you believe the numbers, 41,300 auto or manufacturing jobs were created, or we're replacing auto, but basically the manufacturing sector is making jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like the ISM manufacturing index has like been like in contraction for like 3 months in a row, right? So it's like the numbers don't jive, right? So manufacturing is declining, yet we're adding manufacturing jobs. Is like something here, either manufacturing is increasing in the United States or we're not really adding these manufacturing jobs. So that was just that last point that I wanted to add in there, Mike.
Yeah, I understand. Yes,
Before I forgot.
sir. All right. Well, it has been a great stream thus far, and so the goal is to hone in on some exact times, narrow it down, put everything we got, force you, the guys, to participate via chat or phone lines. We didn't get a call today, which is okay. It's Friday. Everybody enjoy your Friday and your weekend, and we'll be back at it on Monday, same time, 11. Come prepared for some chit chat. And the more importantly, if you guys come across any articles or stories in your area, wherever you're watching us from on this planet, comment beneath this video here or shoot us an email at news@silverdoctors.com so that we can make note of it and bring it into the conversation on Monday, and we'll touch on it. And so once again, it's power in numbers. So with more people keeping their eyes to the ground or ears to the ground, eyes open, we can definitely touch on more subject matter and definitely make this well diverse. So with that being the case, it's been great hanging out. Paul, anything you want to leave us with before we sign off?
No, let me look at the medals here real quick. Because obligatory smash the medals when the jobs report came out, and it's funny too. I do have one last thing to say, so I will have these final thoughts here.
Yeah.
This jobs report, right? And wage growth was 3.1% year over year. So what does that say? That says not only does it like basically solidify the case that the Fed's going to hold next week, but really theoretically, the Fed needs to be raising rates next week, right? So what does that mean? That means that theoretically, this is bearish for the stock market, right? It's bad for stocks and it's good for gold, right? What happens to gold and silver? You just naked short the crap and sell the crap out of it. And then we got silver sitting at $16.59 right now, and gold's sitting at $14.63. So go figure, it's like our upside down world that we're living in here, Mike.
Yeah, so all that tells me is that you need to get you some physical weight in your hands while you still can and take advantage of the manipulation. I've learned to appreciate manipulation myself, and so yeah, I might just go do something right now. But all right, everybody, it's been great hanging out. Enjoy your weekend. See you guys Monday, 11 a.m. same time, same place. Invite a friend along with you and share this video via social media and get the word out there. And then also, beneath this video here is all the information you need. Connect with us on social media because I post articles all the time, and you do a great job of doing what you do as well, Mr. Half Dollar. So everybody be blessed, be safe. See you guys later. Peace.